Hello, creative friends. Welcome to Junk Journal January. Welcome to day 7. My name is Shami, and let's get started on the project. Hello, creative friends. We are going to make these hand stitched pins, and I'm going to add tea quotes to them too. So you're just going to need simple supplies. This is what they look like. This one I used a staple with, but I'm going to show you how to sew them. And you're going to need some safety pin. You kind of want bigger ones for this, and then lots of scraps. You can use fabric scraps or paper scraps. I'm going to use both. A stapler if you don't want to sew, and then thread and needle. And I am going to add some buttons here too. And I decided to add a little bit of sparkle to my safety pins. So I'm going to use just some nail polish. If you don't have nail polish, don't worry about it. And then I have some tea quotes. I have a lot of these. So we're going to incorporate them into this project. I drink a lot of tea. I love it. So, and I love these quotes. I even made like a little mini book. So there are so many fun ways that you can use them, but I thought I would incorporate them. And we're going to make like an embellishment for our junk journal, which is going to be so cool. So I'm going to start by working on a piece of plastic, and I am going to apply some of this glitter nail polish on there. You do want it to be a little thicker, and I recommend that you open up the safety pin. I will end up doing that with the other one, but I just thought you don't really want them to kind of be glued together. So it's better to open them. And you want to lay it on fairly thick. You could probably, I bet you could like alcohol ink these, and that would probably work better, or even rust them. I think that would be really cool. I just didn't have enough time, but I'm definitely going to try that too. But I love um, the pins that I've been seeing that are sewed onto safety pins. So I thought, well, let's make a pin for our journal. So really fun. And now I'm going to open it up, and you're just going to let one side dry, and then you'll do the other side. And you can also use a hair dryer. And, nail polish can be a little stinky. So keep that in mind. If that bothers you, please do this in like a well ventilated area. But I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do blue for this other one too. And I love the way that this one turns out too. But I am so happy to be with you for Stitched or Stitch for Junk Journal January. This is going to be such a fun event. It's definitely my favorite time of the year. And this is one of my favorite collaborations hosted by Meg's Journal, which is so great. So I am just going to apply that and let it dry. And then I'm going to fast forward so you can see me do the other side. And that's it. But I can't wait to see all of the fabulous projects that are going to go on. So we're going to let that dry completely, and then we'll come back after that's done. And it can be a little bit messy. I like to put it on a little thicker because I want to be able to see the color a little bit. But just make sure you keep the safety pin open. And you can get these safety pins really anywhere. I get mine at the dollar store, but you can get them anywhere. You just want the bigger kind. Okay. And now that that's dry, this is how they look. They have a little bit of sparkle, a little bit of magic. They don't just look like, dull safety pins. And I'm going to put the nail polish aside. Make sure that I screw the top on. Okay. And then I'm going to start out what I call an anchor piece. So this is just a piece of handmade paper, and you can tear it or cut it, but you just want it to be the width of the bottom of your safety pin. Okay. So that's it. And then from there, you're going to kind of build on there, and you'll see like you can add embellishments on the sides. You can make this super interesting and have lots of layers, but we just want that one big piece that's an anchor piece. And I'm doing paper and fabric, but you could just do paper and that would work out great too, or just fabric if you just want to do the sewing, and it'll be a lot easier because the paper can be a little bit hard to sew through. And you see, I'm going to use like a darning needle to start out with, which I don't recommend that you do. Get a sharp needle and just be careful of your fingers because it does have a lot of resistance. So I have 3 pieces here, and I'm going to fold them over. So I'm just making sure that they're not too big for my safety pin. And I'm going to fold them over a little bit. And then those are going to be my 3 anchor pieces. okay, to kind of keep things together. And then I can go in and embellish more too. I'm going to look for a piece of fabric, and I find this piece of fabric that is like my wipe off kind of fabric. So it's like under fabric and it's really colorful, and I've been tearing it up and using it. But it's great. I get like handkerchiefs or even a sheet and I tear it up, and it works really, really well for rags for me to wipe my brush off. And you just get like details that you would never get, right, if you were intentionally trying to recreate it. And then I'm going to grab a little piece of paper here, book pages. I love that. And I'm going to stick that in there. Then I'm going to fold everything over, and you'll see that I'm going to staple, but I mess up the first time. So you just fold it over and you're going to have a little bit in the back. You want to fold it over comfortably, and then I'm going to use a stapler and I'm going to staple it through, but it's not going to go through, so I'm going to remove that because the little piece of paper is not in the little bundle. So we're just going to take that out, and then I will restaple it. But there is so much inspiration around us, so I love looking at, even though I'm not really a sewer, I love looking at sewing projects for inspiration. I think it's really cool how textures are combined and just how cool stitches look. So I'm going to staple again, this time better, so I get all the pieces this time. Alrighty, so if you don't want to sew, you can absolutely stop here and then glue on your quote, but I am going to show you one that is completely sewn. Okay, so we're going to do a few more of these so that you can see. So I'm going to start out with some more paper, and I'm just going to show you, if you want to embellish this a little bit more, you can. So you can add more pieces to the base. You can add more fabric just by using your glue gun. So if even if you just want to fold down like one piece of paper, and then kind of embellish it from the front, you can absolutely do that too. So the possibilities are endless. You can make these as big or as complex as you want, and it's such a fun way to use your paper scraps or fabric scraps, which I'm always looking for. And I also sell like little kits of fabric and paper scraps too in my Etsy store if you're interested in that. They are a great price, and they're filled with goodies, and they're actual like scraps. So don't be expecting like any like full pieces of paper. They're paper scraps from cutting and tearing and things like that, but it's a nice mix. I love like getting people scraps. It's like everyone always has something cool. So this is one that I made too, and I did exactly the same thing, and then I stapled it. So the staple kind of keeps things in place, and you can sew on top of the staple too. So this one we're just going to sew completely. We're not even going to staple it at the top. So I'm just going to kind of move a little faster here, and I'm going to cut down my pieces of fabric and paper and create that kind of collage of paper goodies, which is awesome. And there's no wrong or right way to do this. Just keep in mind that you have to sew through all of these layers. So maybe you want to just keep it a little bit light. I definitely went a little bit heavier, but it worked for me. Add some tissue paper, and I just kind of play with the scales of things. I think neutrals really bring things together. And I'm going to grab some of my floss here or my thread. I'm using embroidery floss, and I'm using all 6 layers, but you can use whatever you want. Whatever kind of string, yarn would probably work for this. Whatever you want will be great. And I'm just going to trim it off. And then I have a needle there that I'm going to attempt to thread. So I have a threader, and I'm going to use that to thread through. And I like contrast, so I'm going to have black stitches, but you could use whatever color you want. And I'm going to cut out some white too, because we're going to sew another one together, but that one will be in fast forward. And I am leaving this mostly for real time so you can see like it took me about 20 minutes to sew this all together to where I wanted it. So it does take a little bit of time, but hey, if you're like sitting at your desk or in front of the TV, I love making these embellishments. I'm totally addicted. I've made a lot of them. So they're fun. And as I said, I'm not really a sewer, but I really love this process. And you could get really fancy and do really fancy stitches. I'm just gonna do like an all over running stitch and kind of go crazy. So I'm not doing anything fancy here. So I'm gonna take just the piece of paper and fabric, and those are gonna be kind of my anchor pieces, and I'm going to fold them over and I will close the safety pin for this. And you could even add a pin. I'm going to grab a clip and I'm going to clip it on there just to keep things in place while I'm sewing. So let me grab a clip here. And I threaded my needle. I'm going to tie a knot now too, whichever way works best for you. I like tie 3 knots and gently guide them, um, so it doesn't go through the paper or the fabric. So that's what I'm going to do here. And one more. And I am going to hold this up so you can see me sew. So sometimes I won't be in frame. I'm sorry about that. But it's a little bit hard to sew on on camera because I do need to see kind of where the stitches are and because it's so thick. So I'm just going to start by doing just a running stitch at the base. Okay. And I'm going in. Okay. And then I'm going out. So I'm going in on the back. And then I'm going to add another stitch right next to it and pull it through. And I'm just doing a running stitch. Okay, so really, really simple. And I'm going to do that all the way down or all the way in a line, not a straight line, but in a line until I reach the end of my paper. And as I said, this is a pretty dull needle, so make sure that you use a sharp one because you're going through so many layers. So that was kind of the most annoying part of this project that I figured out real quick that you really do want a sharper needle. That will help a lot. So I'm going to bring that in, but I wanted you to kind of see a close up of the stitches. So that's why I'm holding it like this. I hope I don't make you too dizzy or sick. And I apologize, but I thought this would be the easiest for you to kind of see my stitches. Do the same thing there, and you can pull it through. And let's go all the way to the edge there, just with a plain running stitch. Just don't get too close to the edges. And you could stop here, and I think it would be beautiful, and then add your quote, and that would be great too. But I wanted to add more stitches. I want the stitches to kind of be a background of this piece, for when, or like kind of like mark making. I love mark making. Um, yes, so they can kind of be in the background. And I'm just going to do a couple of rows of stitches and then I'm going to go crazy and just have stitches all over the place. I saw like this seed, it's called a seed stitch, and it's just crazy, like little stitches all over the place. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. So I got inspired by that. And I think this is where like I did something funny and the fabric was a mess. So I had to rethread the needle. And yeah, and I'm just going to keep working here. So really, really simple. I hope that you try this. If I can sew, anyone can sew. It is possible, I promise. Just gonna keep going here. And as I said, this did take me about 20 minutes to sew, but I'm doing real time. And this is kind of where I'm like, okay, let's go crazy and add some fun stitches, and you can do so many cool stitches. I think it'd be really cool to do like French knots or, you know, X's or something like that. So get out those embroidery books and be inspired. It's so great. You could even do like a pillow stitch around the edges of your embellishment. I think that would be really cool too, but I'm just going to keep it simple and random and we're going to keep it going. You can sew as much as you want, and I am going to show you if you wanted to like attach the pieces of paper, you could totally do that too. So I'm just going to keep working here, drop it, pick it back up, keep sewing. Yes, that's all that we're going to do. And it really was a fun process. I love how these embellishments turned out. And I did decide to add a button too. I thought, why not add a little bit more detail? But it looks great just with the stitching. I mean, you could do this and be totally fine. But of course, I wanted to add a little bit of pizzazz. You can go all the way to the bottom of your piece. So you can do a lot of really cool things. And I think that when we're thinking of attaching things, sometimes we don't think about stitching, but you can use stitches to attach so many cool things. So it's great. Very good. And I'm trying not to tangle up my thread because I am notorious for doing that. So it happens. Okay, now I'm going to grab another piece of paper and we're going to attach that. So instead of using glue, you could also use your stitches. So I'm going behind and I'm going to attach it. But, if you were in the front and you wanted to attach it, you could do that too. Just be a different look. I wanted the blue behind the brown. I really love contrast and using lots of neutrals. So you'll see that a lot in my work. I think I love color, but sometimes color can be too much for the eyes. So I think if you add contrast, it's an easy way to kind of bring things together. So I'm definitely not an artist that is afraid to use black. So we're just going to keep going here. I attach that piece. There we go. Look at that. It's there. It's awesome. And I'm going to attach a button. So I go in through one hole and then I'm going to bring it through the other hole with just a running stitch or just a single stitch. And then that's going to be the end of the stitching for this embellishment. Okay. And you don't have to add the button. You don't have to do that, but I thought it was cool. And then I should have just made a knot with my needle on there, but I was so excited that I tucked the needle out. So I'm just going to tie a couple knots in the last stitch that I did. And then I really love the fibers hanging. I'm going to cut them off later, but you'll see, or the thread hanging. So I'm going to do that a few more times. So go like under the other stitch and do some fancy stuff that probably sewers are screaming about right now. But it worked. It's not falling apart, so that's good. And you can add a little bit of tape if you don't even want to bother with the knot. And that will work out too. But this is how it looks. I love it, and I love it hanging off. And I'm going to trim those. I attempted to like take them apart, but that didn't work out the way that I wanted. So it could be like hanging, you know, threads or something, but that didn't work. So I'm going to fast forward that part. Yeah, because it just didn't work. So we're going to do that. But I love the way this looks. And then I am going to grab one of my quotes and I'm going to just glue it on there. And you can add more embellishments to the quote if you want. Like I thought this needs something else. So I'm going to grab a piece of white tissue paper that has gold dots. And I'm just using a glue stick, but feel free to use whatever kind of glue you want and it'll work out too. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue on the back and then add the tissue paper like that. And then I'll add it right on top of the embellishment. And isn't that cool? And it's really nice, but we need to add something else too. But I love the way that it looks. It's really cool. And I'm going to trim these because I decided let's give them a trim and maybe that will help me to be able to kind of fray the edges, which it totally did. And I like that a lot. And I'm going to cut off that white string from the tea bag. I thought maybe I would incorporate it, but I don't like it. So I'm going to cut it off. Simple, simple, simple. Yeah, and that's it. And you can stop there if you want. I'm going to add some instant coffee. I get this from the Dollar Tree. Add a little bit of water, and I'm going to kind of antique this. And I'll make it look a little bit vintagey, even on the fabric and the paper too, just to add some interest. And you could do this with matte medium if you don't want to use water. If you're worried about, your journal lasting for hundreds of years, then feel free to do that. And that's basically it. Look at how cool that is. I love it. And you can open it up and add it into your journal pages. I'm going to show you me making a couple more so you can see that too. And I'll turn on some music so you can hear that. And I'll come back after that. Okay, so I'm going to grab my junk journal here and we are going to put this embellishment in here, but I'm going to start out just by making a quick background. So I just have some paper scraps and I'm going to glue them down and then I'm going to use some cheap white craft paint and I'm going to kind of push back all the patterns so that my embellishment really pops off the page. I brought this white paint at Hobby Lobby. They have a new collection, kind of like of craft paints in a bottle. They're like, I think like $1.49. but the white is not very opaque. It's very, very transparent. So I've been trying to think of ways to use it, and this works out. I probably won't buy it again because it's not very white, but it does work out great for these applications. So I have like a magazine paper, I have under paper, I have book pages, I have a security envelope, and I'm going to use the last little bit of that handmade paper that has like the blue embellishment. So if you want to make a quick background, I love doing this, just using my scraps, and you get the texture and a little bit of the pattern showing through. And I like doing this with kind of neutral colors. Like it's okay if there's a little bit of pop of color, like for the blue. But I like to kind of keep it simple. And you don't have to do the whole page like covered with paper scraps like I'm doing. You could just stop here. And this is bubble paper that I made from the last Start with the Mark challenge last year. This is the last little bit on an index card. So I'm going to use that too. And I just love the pattern that bubble painting does. So that's a fun technique if you've never seen it. It's so much fun. I think I have a video. You can totally check it out. It's really fun, especially to do with your kids. They absolutely love it. And it's so fun to watch bubbles and paint interact together. I'm going to add another piece of my book page here. And then I'm going to kind of check the placement. And I do think that it needs to be pushed back a little bit. So I squirted out some of that cheap, non-opaque, very transparent white. And I'm going to just kind of push that back. And I just added a little bit of water, but you see, even when I don't add water, it's very transparent. So you will get to see a little bit of the background pages, and we're just going to spread that out, and I'm going to dry that off. And I'm also going to add a little bit of coffee too. But it just kind of pulls everything together. I love UV scraps, but sometimes they don't quite go together or they have too much contrast. So this is a great trick. I'm going to add a little bit of coffee and I'm going to spray it. And if you wanted to, of course, you could, add more layers to this, but I like to keep things simple in my junk journal, especially when I've been making embellishments. I'm like, okay, I just want to get this on a page. I don't want to do more work. So, yeah, I love having embellishments just for that reason, that you can just kind of toss them in there. I even have a class making a bunch of really cool embellishments. So it's really fun. I love that class. And I have so many more ideas too. And I'm just going to stick the safety pin through the paper, and just like you would if you were pinning this on yourself, and I'm going to attach it, and that is it. You could add splatters, but I really love how this looks. Thank you so much for joining me. It was so much fun. Thank you, Meg, for this wonderful collaboration, and I know that you're going to find so much inspiration from all the amazing artists that are taking part. And you can just use a staple. You can add more embellishments like I did with the blue one. So the possibilities are endless. And if you make these, please tag me so that I can show you some love. And I will see you next time. Happy creating, my wonderful friends. Bye bye.